I am Joseph Njoroge Memia, a Kikuyu by tribe, and my origin home is Kiambu in Gatundu, today Gatundu South, Kiamwangi location, and Motemomo village. My parents were Mr. Thega Memia and his wife, Mrs. Lucia Wangoi Memia. Our clan is Agashiko Ambale Yashiri, which is a big tribe. And since we split as we increase in numbers, now we have split to Agikoyo, Agashiko, Ambale Yashiri, and today Agashiko Ambale Yamemia, a smaller group. My father's family came from Muranga, their ancestors, and then they settled in Kiamwangi. Their great-grandfather is the one who came from Muranga, settled from Gadage to Kiamwangi, a very sparse area. My father was one of the sons of Thega. Thega had about 7 wives, and my grandfather's mother was one of them. Some of those women were not directly married to him, but they belonged to his father. My father's father was given some wives by his father, who had so many wives, some of who were taken when they went for cattle rustling in Masai land and in Cumberland. My grandfather was known as Thega Memia, and my father, Memia, was named after my grandfather's father as a firstborn of his mother. And his estimated time of birth is in around 1900. My father came from a very large family. The big family was known as Kihahanyu. And Kihahanyu had about 5-6 families which formed Kihahanyu as a clan, and they all belonged to Agashiko Ambale Yashiri. My father was born of a lady known as Duta Wadhiga, and there were 5 siblings, 3 brothers and 2 sisters. My father was the firstborn. As I said earlier, we estimate him to have been born around 1900. During their days, the children used to go herding the animals because most of the properties, especially which made people or men brown, were animals. All the same, women tended as the lad, and they had many crops, but men, the young men, used to look after the animals, not only in their homestead, not only near where they have claimed the land, but they used to go far. In our case, having come from Kiamwangi in Gatundu, the animals used to migrate to nearby areas, that is in Ruiru area, Juja area, and they would go far south to Kilimambogo and Ukambani area. Whatever I was explaining about the occupation of the boy child may sound a bit harsh, a bit cruel, or maybe wild. If when talked in English, I would like to say a little about it in Kikuyu. It was heroism as far as the tribe and the clan were concerned. Gutietagwo kuiya, it was not known as stealing. Gwetagwo gutaha. Gutaha nĩ gũthiĩ gũtunyana, na gũtunyana gwatunyanagwo nĩ njamba, na gwatunyanagwo matekũragana na matekũrũa, na gwathiagwo ta megũcenjania, kĩhinda kĩmwe Agĩkũyũ magataha cia Maathai na cia Ikamba, na wacio magacipaĩ nao magoka magataha ciao. Na when they go raiding, the young men who went raiding brought whatever they have come with home. They did not mix that with their animals they are herding near there, but they brought right home. And they were acclaimed as heroes. They are sung for, they are celebrated, and they use some of the gotten animals to pay dowry when they are getting their own wives. So, they were not seen as thieves, but they were seen as heroes by the clan, by the family, and by the society. One good thing I would like to emphasize is that they did not harm any other person. When they come to raid, you try to defend, but you do not kill. So when I go back to my father, he happened to be one of those, but firstborns were a bit stubborn. After they have done this for a while, they tended to leave their siblings who are after them to look after the animals, and they went to look for jobs since Europeans had already come. And in our area especially, they had settled, they had already planted coffee, and they had sisal and many other cash crops. They also had other jobs that they had started. And therefore, the firstborns who were to be held responsible of the home even after the departure of their parents started to be responsible earlier. And therefore, they went out to fend for themselves and to see what they can do independently. And so did my father, who was one of the firstborn sons. And hence, he went to look for employment, and he was employed by a company that was growing sugarcane and had sugar factory. It was called Shukari Limited. It spread from near Githurai to near Juja, or what we can call now Kenyatta Road. They had a big factory where they processed the sugar, where now we have Thika Road, and we have a factory that makes bricks. That is the area that there was that big factory, and the factory was known as Mebri. There is a estate that has come up there known as Mebri. So that's where my father started working, and after a while, he was recruited to be a cook. The European manager in the factory employed him and loved him, and that is where he came to meet his wife. As I have always said, there were 5 siblings, and being the firstborn, he had a duty even to try and take care of those who were after him. My mother, Lucia Wangui, was of a parentage of Njoroge Wamwea as a father, and Gashoki Wanjoroge as a mother. They initially originated from Murang'a as usual, but with them, they came late. They were from Katanga, and that's where my mother was born with his siblings in a place known as Gatanga Kegio. They left their families there, believing that they were being bewitched because of disputes in land, which was getting scarce. They lost 2 of their siblings, the children of my grandfather, maternal grandfather, and therefore the grandfather and his family decided to run away from there. If I can a little elaborate, quite a number of people were migrating from Murang'a, or the origin area of Mogikuyu, from Mukuru, Nyagathanga. They spread all over. There's quite a number who spread westwards, and those happen to be among them. Many of their family members and clan had moved earlier. So when my grandfather and grandmother realized and believed that they were being bewitched, they decided to run away, and they decided to come to where other members of their clan had gone and seek shelter while they look for a way to settle. They were Amboi, Ambariambu, and Amboi is a big clan. They are also cousins to Amboi Ambaria Marigo. And members of those 2 clans had moved earlier. They came past Kiamwangi, and they went to Githunguri in areas known as Komodai, Marige, and all those areas. Those whom had managed to come with them is the wife Gashoki Wanjoroge, my mother Lucia Wangui Wanjoroge, although she came to be Christian very late after. She was just Wangui Wanjoroge. She had 3 sisters, Jerry and Wambui, and another one, Rogoro. even after having come there, they had only one brother who was known as Kariuki. In Kikuyu custom, Kariuki is not a name of a person. Kariuki was given to a person who was born and named after whoever was expected to be named and died once or twice. And then the clan had a way of making that child survive once born again. And the other child born and given that name would be called Kariuki. That means somebody who has risen from death. Kurioka is to rise from the dead. So Kariuki is somebody who has risen from the dead. So somebody who has been resurrected by being born again is Kariuki. My uncle, the only maternal uncle, was called Kariuki. His original name was Wamwea, but since he was born 3 times as Wamwea and did not survive, they changed the name, and then that one survived. Since they did not have land, but they were given only a small area to build, they started looking for employment in the coffee farms just to feed the family. So my mother, being the firstborn in their family, and those who were after her, and if I may put this here, the 2 other daughters, Jerry and Wambui, did not survive long after their father died. They got sick and they died one after the other, leaving only 2 daughters, Wangui and Ruguru, and their brother, Kariuki, who was supposed to be Wamwea. So it is while my mother went to the shambas to look for employment in farms that they somehow met with my mother, and they got married. If I can go a little behind, and this is a private area that we did not want to tell during their presence and their time. My mother had married before she met my father as a husband, and she was married to somebody we have come to understand known as Jogona wa Gashui. We have come to learn that Jogona was a drunkard, mistreated my mother so much that she decided to go back to her mother, despite the fact that they had gotten 2 children together, both of them daughters. One of them, the first one, was called Gachoki, which means that she was named after my maternal grandmother, mother of my mother. And the second one was, we believe and we are told, named after the mother of the husband that was divorced and was named Wanjiru. So by the time my mother met my father, she had these 2 children, who were adopted and accepted by my father. And according to Kikuyu culture, there were rituals performed to incorporate and to accept and have them as real members of the family. There were animals to be slaughtered to have them as the family members. In Kikuyu we say, magishiarwo na mburi, na vava akiruta mburi cia miruru, iria ciarutirwo cia kuhata miruru tondu maciarĩirwo kwa aciari a maitu atahikĩte. Miruru nĩ gũciara kwa mwana na kũgeria kũrera, na gĩko kĩa ũciari nĩ kĩhatagwo nĩ ũrĩa wakua ciana iria ciaciarĩrwo mũciĩ itaciarĩtwo nĩ mũthuri ũcio kana itaciarĩirwo kwa mũthuri ũrĩa wagũrana. I think that is difficult to explain in English, but I can only say there are rituals that are performed to get these children adopted entirely, accepted in the clan, in the home and society as real children of that family where the mother has come to be married. After getting married, my father, who was working now in Mebre, was borrowed. If I can clarify here, employees then, during the colonial time, were treated as slaves. Once employed, you did not have any rights. You are to be commanded and you are to be told what to do. So, my father, who was working for a boss, a manager in Mebre sugar factory, was borrowed to help another family that was in Juja. There was a big sisal factory in Juja known as Bag and Cottage. And a friend of the manager who had employed my father borrowed my father to go and help, since they had a bigger number of people to serve. And when he was sent there, he worked and he was loved so much by the new employer. And it is there that the people they served happened to have been a brother of a wife of a settler in Naivasha, Dogo, near Eburo, who had traveled to Mombasa on holiday. and on their way back, they stopped in their in-laws' place in Juja, where they found my father. When they left and went back to their place in Naivasha, they pleaded with the in-law in Juja to help them with my father to go and train their cooks, since they found him a well-polished cook according to their way of life. And therefore, my father was released to join the family in a buru ndogo Naivasha. At that time, he had already settled his family in Kiamwangi, being my mother Wangui, the two children adopted, and they had gotten two more children. The two children who were born of Memia and Wangui after they got married, the first one was a girl child named after my father's mother. And this was, or still is, because she still exists, Nduta wa Memia Wadhiga. And she is estimated to have been born in 1936. And we also estimate, since we have no written or recorded history, we assume that that is the year our father went to Naivasha, although he used to come to visit the family before he migrated them to where he was working. The second one that was born was a baby boy and was named as Thega Wamemia, named after grandfather, the father of my father. My mother was left with those 4 children, while my father stayed in Naivasha until 1939, when he decided to take his family with him. And he asked his brother, sister, and other relatives, who, even after he took his wife and children there, a number of relatives visited him in Naivasha, and he helped them get employment within the areas. Daramea's place, where he was employed, and elsewhere. Some of them stuck to the jobs, others found it difficult and they went back home. So in 1939, he decided to call his family, and he told his youngest brother, if you would allow me to introduce his siblings so that I know whom I'll be referring to. The firstborn of my grandfather and my grandmother, that is Thega Wamemia na Nduta Wadhiga. The firstborn was my father, Memia Wadhiga, and his follower was Njeri Wadhiga, who got married to somebody, Njoroge, who lived in Shaweri, just neighbors of President Kenyatta's family. The third born was a boy named after my paternal grandmother's father, called Gedhinji. And the fourth born was a son who was named to a brother of my grandfather, and was called Kinyanjui. The fifth one and the last was called Wambui. There are many things we would talk about that, but it will be not befitting here. Wambui happens to be grandmother to a lady you may have seen in the news, who was married to Machakos' first governor. You have heard about her. So she is bound to call me uncle, since I'm a cousin to the father. And the father is a son of my aunt, the last born in my father's family. So, the fourth and fifth accompanied my mother when he was called to go and join the husband, and a number of others. The family was such a large one in that my grandfather's brothers were so many and were married to also many wives. So they had many children. One of the cousins of my father, known as Kimanjara, I'm sorry, he called himself Kimanjara, but he was called Bida Nimoiro, also accompanied the team as they were escorting Memia's family to Naivasha. Okay, they walked all the way from Kiamwangi through Kimanuanyahe, went through Komodai, through Marige, Kwamaiko, Kaboi, across all to I'm forgotten. Where did your sister go to school? Kagwe. Kagwe, across that way up to Uplands train station. That's where they boarded the train that carried them from there to Giogio. It may be a shorter distance than Kiamwangi to Uplands, but that's how things were. There were no other means of transport. So Mehemia, the host, would wait for them in Giogio to take them home. The team that accompanied my mother included my aunt, who was my father's youngest daughter, despite the fact that his brother, Kinyanjui, objected her company and wanted to leave her home and even beat her to remain at home. For that reason, she hid behind, because there were paths and there were bushes, and she walked behind them all the way up to Kagwe. That's where she was discovered. And after she was discovered, they would not send her back, though the brother wanted to beat her but was stopped by the others. And she helped my mother to carry the baby. The baby then was Thega, who we believe was born in 1938. So he must have been a year or around 1 year with a few months, hence could not walk. Duta or Warenga, though not so strong, since Those days, they were so timid, we believe she could walk because she was 4 years, according to our estimate. So they got to where my father dwelt, and the employer now gave him land to be tilled by his people, and he built his homestead where they settled. They were not alone, since my father happened to be very social and very much concerned about the siblings and relatives. So he called those of them who liked to go to come and stay with him for a while they looked for employment around or elsewhere. After they settled, and you may allow me to mention here that year, 1939, the year they were migrating, was the year that the Second World War broke. And therefore there was tense all over, and even the movements were not that easy. Yeah, so Memia's wife and family joined him in 1939. And in 1940, at the beginning of it, they were blessed with their 3rd child together, this time a baby boy whom we are certain of the dates of birth for reasons I'm going to give you. Needless to say, the person speaking here happens to be the 2nd born son of Memia and Wangui, and was to be named after the father of Wangui. So was called Njoroge, the maternal grandfather. Those who brought Memia's wife did not go back, but stayed around. The leader of the group that took Memia's wife and children to Memia's place of work was Kenyanjui, the youngest brother to Memia. Before he left on that journey, he was a catechumen, or he was learning catechism to be baptized in one of the schools that were formed by the Kikuyu people. There was a big school and church that was started in their homestead in Kiamwangi. They gave land. It was called Kiamwangi School and Kiamwangi College and Kiamwangi Church, independent church. Since he was planning to be baptized and he left before baptism, immediately getting to Naivasha, he inquired whether there was a branch of that church there. And he was advised that there was one just near the lake Naivasha. And they found out where it was. He joined, and he would go on a Sunday and come back every Sunday despite the fact that he was already employed. So one of the Sundays happened to be the Sunday he had qualified and was going to be baptized. He left early in the morning, and as his story is told, he left Wangui, my mother, in pain. And by the time he came back in the evening, he found a newborn baby, one talking to you. And the date of birth was 4th January 1940. Those days, communication was not as it is today. It is difficult to explain, but there was no what you would call communication. Easy to reach people you would like to, wherever they are. Europeans used to have signals. Some of them have telephones, but they will not allow their subjects to use. In case of emergency, they would have what they called signals, which went to the administration and then delivered to the actual place of destination. That was very rare and was as a matter of emergency and was done by the administration. So the normal communication was relying especially on running errands. There were many people running errands. They would be sent with letters or verbal messages, and they would travel to where the message is supposed to go, deliver it, and then come back. It would take a few days, but it was quicker than any other method, and people are used to that. We have come from very far because, young as I am, by the time I came to Nairobi, communication was equally that poor. We didn't have telephones at all. In the offices where we worked, those of us who worked in the offices, telephone was only for the boss, and you could not even be called from outside. You could not give that number to your relative or any friend, so it wasn't yours. You had to look of a way of doing it, until later on that we were allowed maybe to connect through a telephone that was made a little social in an institution, but not all institutions. It's thereafter that they introduced public telephones, and thereafter they had the booths, and later after they had introduction of telephones in homes, individual homes. And I want to confess to you, young people, that we happen to have been fighting poverty and running away from where we had come from. So whenever an opportunity arose, we didn't want to be left behind. So I would say I was among those who installed telephone immediately it was started getting to individuals. And since then, our home has had telephone. My children, including the one that is with us here, have found a home with a telephone. It was clumsy then, even because they could not call me at the place of work. They would only send a message in case there is anything very urgent, and then I would be informed. But you cannot talk from the office to your house. We do not understand, and we try to get amazed and perplexed when we think of how we lived without telephones, and now everything we are doing, including banking, paying debts, and all the communication, including talking video-wise with those of our relatives elsewhere, holding meetings, seeing one another, is used as we talk. We are in a very developed country within a very short time. I urge you to accept it and appreciate the pace that has been taken. We are faster than the Europeans who discovered all these facilities. Yes, I was born on 4th January 1940, as told by my uncle, who was baptized on that day, and it was a Sunday. That's why we are all confident that must be a true record. After my birth, now the second sibling to be born was a baby boy once again, called Githinji, named after my father's brother. He was born in 1943, a date that is not recorded. In the same 1943, the firstborn in the family, though adopted, by the name Gashoki Memia now, was big enough to undergo through circumcision. For these two gifts from God to be celebrated by the family, my then existing paternal grandfather, Vega Wamemia, traveled from Kiamwangi to Naivasha, Ndogo, to witness these occasions, to see the firstborn and witness the circumcision of the firstborn child of Memia and Wangui. It was during the time of the great famine known in Kikuyu as Ngaraguya Mianga, which means the famine of cassava. It was known as such because, especially in the central province, all the food plants that they had in the gardens withered. Others were eaten by locusts, and therefore there was famine. So what remained are the cassavas, and they were advised to plant cassava. They ate cassava, and they even used the leaves of cassava as boga, the relics. It is, the leaves are hard, but they could crush them on with a mortar. What do you call ndere in English? You know what ndere is? Yeah, ndere is carved from a hard tree, and then you make it hollow, and you cut and is wide, That's where they used to put grains that they want to crush, and then they have a big mortar, and then they would crush like that.
Oh, it's like a big pestle and mortar.
Yes, and that better is called a diri, and this one, the mortar was called mudhi, diri na mudhi. So diri used to crush the leaves so that they can be soft to eat, and so they were also using them to crush maize so that they can make uji and to make it softer for those who could not crush hard maize. My grandfather didn't stay long. After the occasion, he went back to Central Province, Kiamwangi, and we never saw him again. He died and was buried. This was at the time of war, and now life continued with tension, not movement curtailed. Ladies and girls' children were working, picking pareto from the European farm, and after that tilling the land that were given by the employer, the Mzungu. Mzungu used to give them a piece of land in the bush. They clear and till it for about 2 years. When the land is soft, he plants whatever he wanted, whether it was wheat, barley, pareto, or anything else. And then they would be shifted to another bush to clear. They were not getting tired. That's all they knew, and they were used to it. Boy children like me and my big brother were to look after the flock of sheep. My father had quite a number of them, and therefore my brother Thega, and me used to herd them. They used to be allowed to keep only sheep because they do not eat trees. They live on grass and was not harmful. They would clear and make the grass the size that is acceptable. There were bushes and the land was spans, so they used to go around and herd them. It was scary. At times you could see wild animals, including elephants, passing by and bringing down bushes where they want to pass. They are used to pass hordes of wild dogs, in Kikuyu known as Njoi. They run in big numbers, making noise, just barking like dogs, hoo, hoo, hoo. And they were very scary. They are wild. They are really wild, and they are bad. But God's grace, we never got any harm from any animal, not even from snakes. There were so many snakes, it was so hot. We were living in an area near where you have thermal being operated today. It was called Ndogo because smoke would come from underground, and there were holes coming up as if they were ant holes, but they were holes letting out fumes of smoke like the fumes of water. And when people went to the garden and it was a little far from home, they would put their green maize there, or even potatoes, because they used to grow a lot of these Irish potatoes, and they get ready and they eat, because it was very hot. I think it was volcanic, but it was letting out fumes of water or steam. You see, during that time that we played many games, and one of the games we played with my brother as we had at the cattle is playing with dongu. Dongu is, I think my daughter there will tell me what we call it in Kikuyu. There are many in Deya, dongu. Yes.
Yellow ones.
Yellow one, yes, you know them?
Yeah, I know them.
Yeah. That's a small slab that brings that fruit. So those fruits we would we would cut big, and we would cut a glass, the hard glass, a piece of like that, and then you pierce through the dongu. We used to put on a small sheet, which was tied at the side here, and it rolled down. So when it's hot and we are there, we would take it out, put it on our laps, make it tight by pulling our legs apart, and it becomes so tight like a table, and you make it level. And then you make sure that you make it straight, and then you have the stick, the long one on the top, then a small one there, and then you spin it like that. And you spin, you may have 2 or 3, and we would compete. In one of these occasions, mine played well that day, but my brothers did not play well, and he was disappointed. He got angry, and in that anger he meant to punish his dongu, which did not work, and he put his dongu in the mouth, chew it for a short time, and got the bitterness of the dongu in the mouth. He spit it off and cried, and I laughed at him. We live to remember that. He is a very calm and very friendly person, but that time dongu frustrated him, and he punished it by chewing it, but he punished himself more by swallowing and having a mouth very bitter, till he would look for wild fruits to clear it off. After that, we would say the next big occasion was the time of circumcision of our second-born daughter, sister's circumcision. Just before that, the fight between the British, the German, and Italians was very, very, very severe. And our employers were British, and therefore they recruited all their employees and all those who were under them to curse and to condemn their opponents all the time. Due to that, our elders and those who are bigger than us trained us to sing songs to that effect, condemning the opponents of the British people. And there is a song that was known as Modhuo, and many other songs. But Modhuo was sung by the young boys and the girls. They would make hats through the paper or the dry leaves of the bananas. They're called Govia Shiamagoto or Govia Shiamaratadi. And then they put on feathers on them. And then they will sing. And they would use sticks, and at times they would shape something like a sword out of wood, and those are the items they used to use as they were dancing, jumping. And if I can just sing a little to hear how it used to sing. It used to sing as this. Emodhuo 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 idhero njeyere siande emodhuo ae emodhuo idhero njeyere denatinjei ae natinjei amwale anyokwa natinjei ae natinjei amwale wanyu amwale amwale wanyu kwele ithandũkũ ya mwale ae amwale wanyu kwele ithandũkũ hitira ae hitira rokwa rohe enjeka hitira ae hitira rokwa rohe enjeka ronyitana ae yarogwatana ngorona mahũri arogwata ae yarogwatana ngorota mahũri ndegeo ndegeo ae ndegeo eroka yũkĩte naũ ndegeo ae ndegeo eroka kugĩte. I cannot remember well, but if I practiced, I could. Now they were singing that the freight, the plane that is coming, whom is it carrying? Then you sing for the governor, you sing for the DCs who are there because they were. And then Yukas Hitra, who was leading the Germans, you say, may he die, may his lips collapse, and then mix the heart and the lungs. So, but it didn't last long. Towards the end of 1945, the war ended. The Second World War ended. Although there were many Italians who were held prisoners, they are the same people who were helping maintaining the railway and making the escarpment road. They stayed around, and some of them even remained about, and they started the farm, the sisal farming. Italians were so good on the sisal farming together with the Greeks. And some of those who didn't go after the end of the war settled and got farms farming this kind of plants. So in 1945, at the end of the year, those who came from the war, among them my maternal uncle, joined the rest of the people. Some of them seek employment from the European employers, settlers, farmers. But they could not, many of them could not stick to the employment because they could not go back to the state they were in before the war. When they went for war outside, they met with even whites who were within the army. Some of them were fighting together, And some of our Africans and Kenyans especially fought and earned promotions in the war. And they became bosses of the whites and other colors and tribes who were in the war. So they were used to commanding and arguing and reasoning, which was not allowed by the employers there before. So they started agitating their fellow Kenyans. They found, the Kikuyus especially, and thereafter they started recruiting them and emphasizing to them that these people are as equal as we are. We were with them in war. Some of them died. We survived. Some of them were juniors. We used to punish them. So they should not be allowed to continue harassing us, to continue getting our property, to continue denying us all the rights. So they agitated. Therefore, the employer or the whites were alerted that Africans were having something. They reported to their bosses. It went to the British Hand Office. They were given okay through the governor to restrict and to limit the freedom of the subjects. One of the freedoms denied employees like my father is a limitation of animals they kept. They were allowed to keep as many animals as possible before, sheep especially, because they don't eat, they don't destroy trees. And as such, my father had quite a number of them. And those are the ones we looked after with my elder brother. At this time, a declaration was made that all the employees, all the squatters should have the animals reduced to 25 heads of animals. Some had so many, hundreds, and therefore had to do away with them. They didn't know of a KMC, they didn't know of a butchery, so they either eat or kill them or take them where they came from. But they had to be left with only 25 heads. It was, the declaration in Swahili was called kifagio. Kifagio. Wa kifagio. Only 25 animals. So, my father, being a victim, was troubled and had to look for a way of clearing the rest of them, because he had close to 200 or there or more than that. So he got a big hand. That was at the beginning of in 1946, and he decided to take them to Central Province, where he had come from. He took his first son with him, my elder brother. He was young then. They walked the flock or ship from where we used to stay to Gilgil station. Already he would organize to book a bogie to carry them according to the number. They would say how many bogies he needed for the number of animals he had. Then a heap and books. So they walked them all there with his son. They boarded them. Unfortunately, they could not come Nairobi Way or any other station nearer home. The only place they knew of was Uplands. So, after getting to Uplands, they offloaded the load of many animals and they started walking them the same way, all the way from Uplands through the same way to Kiamwangi in Gatundu. Some would die on the way, some would be weak, and they leave them to the people who are hosting them and giving them stay overnight in places. People are very friendly then because they didn't need to carry much. They were given food wherever the night fell, and the animals were never stolen. When they got the animals home after about 2 weeks, my dad decided to dispose them off by paying dowry for his younger brothers, Githinji and Kinyanjui. Githinji had a fiancée in Mangu, where my father took a big flock of sheep and paid dowry. Still many were left, and he took another group to where his younger brother Kinyanjui had already found a fiancée. After paying dowry for his 2 brothers, still a few animals were left. My father was a kind person, very social, and sympathized especially with people from back home, and therefore he offered to look for a job for those who approached him. A boy came looking for a job while he was still working, and he had him employed as a Toto Jikoni. Toto Jikoni is a boy who is employed in the kitchen of a white man or Mzungu to be washing the utensils and clearing whatever is to be cleared and the waste from the kitchen. Such a boy that he had employed worked with him, and when he decided to come to bring the animals home, that boy decided to give him a letter to deliver to his family. The family was not very far from our home. They were from Kiamuria, and from Kiamwangi to Kiamuria is roughly 20 miles farthest. Therefore, as he delivered the letter to the family of that boy, to those parents that he did not know before, he gave the letter, introduced himself, they knew one another, and they were happy that it is him who had offered their son employment. As he narrated his story, the way he had come and whatever made him come and about the animals, and he even revealed that he had not finished the animals, the father of that boy or that young man he had employed asked him to bring the remaining few animals, leave them with him, and he takes one of his daughters who was there, a small daughter, and if I can just put it a little in Kikuyu, he said this: Memia angikorwo nĩũratigirie mbũri, thiĩ ũndehere icio ũratigirie, ngũnengere kairĩtu gaka gakwa getagwo Wanjikũ, ũthiĩ ũkererere, ũnengere mũtumia waku Wangũi agakũrie na kamũteithagie wĩra. That means if you truly have animals remaining, just bring them to me. I'll offer you this daughter of mine. You take her to your wife. She will bring her up and have her as a co-wife. You bring her up as a wife. Yeah. So my father went back to his workplace with his son and an extra wife to be and a daughter to be and a co-wife of his wife. Already, the first daughter, who got circumcised in 1943, had already decided to get married. And the parents were completely against it. Despite her age, because she was very young, she insisted on getting married and getting away with a boy that was interested in her, though her parents were not in favor, not even the father of the husband to be, because my father went to find out who the in-law will be. They were both opposed to the children getting married, as my father was, my sister was very young, and the would-be husband was of a questionable character. However, they tried to advise her not to get married. She refused. My grandmother, whom she was named after, the mother of my mother, was living with us. My father, when my mother came to join my father, she would not have been left behind, since the son and the only son was taken to go to the war. So she was also taken by my father and built her a hut just outside my father's homestead. So they lived together. They advised her, my sister, not to get married, and when she would not hear of it, she was taken to her namesake, the person she was named after, as my grandmother, to advise her. And when she tried to advise her in Kikuyu, let me put it, I may translate a little, that gacoki tiga kuhika kugea na muciĩ, muciĩ ũrĩ oho na nĩũgũgweterera nĩũkũgĩa, ũhurũke o ithuothe na ithuĩ twagĩrĩire o hau, ũgĩe na mũndũ na ũmenye harĩa wagĩrĩirwo nĩ gũthiĩ na ũhote kuoya muciĩ na gũkua muciĩ, tondũ muciĩ nĩ mũritũ. She was rude akicokeria cũcũ ndikwenda kwĩrwo ũhoro wa mũciĩ, ona inyuĩ gũtirĩ mũndũ wĩ kũrĩa aciarirwo, ndaigua nĩ ngwenda gũthiĩ, mũtikanjĩre ũhoro wa mũciĩ nĩ mũritũ, nyũmba ndĩohagwo na mũkwa atĩ nĩ ngũremwo nĩ gũkua. They were not happy. She was beaten and she would not hear of it, so she was let to go. So even as my father was taking animals back to their ancestral home, already the first daughter was not at home. So the girl she was given somehow came to replace the married daughter and joined the other two girls as sisters. Incidentally, she was more or less of the age of the second daughter, Wanjiru, and they coped so well. Unfortunately, she did not live long with her husband, though I will come to that. He was so much influenced by the people he found in Central Province that he felt he should not allow his children to continue herding sheep. And now that they were not there to be taken care of, there were few which could be taken care of by even the girls and the mothers. So he decided to organize with my mother so that they could take their first born son, my brother, to Central Province and start schooling. So immediately the following year, 1947, he organized and they agreed that he takes their first son to Central Province. He was, despite his delicate age, because he was having been born in, he was about 10, or just before 10, because he was born in 1948, and he was being taken to Central Province in 1947, the beginning, 1938, sorry. He was born in 1938, and he was being taken to school in 47. As they came from Central Province with a son and a wife-to-be, God blessed them with another son in 1946. Our last born son, Kariuki, named after my only uncle and brother to my mother. In Kikuyu custom, my son, because I'm named after my mother's father, also the father of the uncle. So the number remained the same, and it's added with a boy. There are a few things that happened there around. I will not get into those details so that at least we get a little time. But my father passed on in 1948, mysteriously. It was very sad because his employer had already decided to relocate, to sell the land in Naivasha and buy land in Molo, where he had found bigger land and more arable for the farming he intended to do. And he wanted to shift with all his stuff. And he was moving. The person who bought his land, another European, Mzungu, urged him to leave him the senior cook, who is Memia, to train his cooks. Then he would join the employer later on, who had already moved to Molo. They agreed, they were so amicable, so they agreed, the employers. The employee had no choice, was to do as commanded, so he was left. And since his people had cultivated so much, he also felt that he had time to continue with the harvest, though the way they were selling was at a throwaway price. He remained behind. The rest of the employees and the former employer went to Molo. As he trained those he was told to train, they started pestering him, asking him to lend him money. He said he didn't have. They started spreading some rumor that he was having many visitors at home, and maybe he is involved in some movements. And therefore, we believe something was organized, because his age mate who used to be with him had just warned him that he had heard the people he was training, those who were with him in the kitchen and in the homestead, the Mzungu's homestead, were backbiting him and said that he was rich and they were borrowing money from him and he refused to lend them. Then he will see. And he reported to him and warned him not to be going home. The distance between where he worked at the Mzungu's house and where his homestead was built was about 2 kilometers. Like from here to St. Mary's. So, and he would travel at night after he had fed the employer. He would travel, spend the night home, and come in the morning. So he was warned by his fellow employee, who was his age mate, to stop moving at night, because the new employees with the new Mzungu were not that happy with him and were envious of him and may harm him. He heeded, and he decided to be sleeping at his place of work. And then in the morning, after serving breakfast, he would come home, mixed with his people, then go for lunch, come home again, and then go in the evening for dinner. As he went in the evening, he decided to be going with my brother, whom he was trying to prepare to go to school. My father and my mother never went to any school, but my father, through the employment and the influence he got from his colleagues and the people he interacted with there and back home, he had learned how to read and write. And he was so enthusiastic and so fond of having schooled family. And therefore, they agreed with his wife that the girl should be prepared and should be taken to start schooling. So he did that, and He used to go with Thega to his place of work. He would teach him overnight to read and write. And as he went to serve food and other duties to the masters, he would leave him having cold water in a basin, and he would dip the legs there so that he doesn't sleep, and he has homework to do. Slates, and there is that stone that we use to write a slate. He would do that until he comes, and so on and so forth. So by the time my brother was taken to school, he knew how to write and read, and therefore he was exempted from the first grade. It was called A. When he was left there, my father came back. As I had mentioned lightly, he did not live long. He died mysteriously. The death, we would up to now believe, was caused by the new colleagues or employees who are joining him, and maybe even the employer, because it was alleged that he committed suicide in his sleeping room, and that he hung himself with a bed sheet. The information was delivered to the family in the morning at around 9. The news was broken, and the whole family burst into cry, and now had to try and get there to see what was happening. That already my mother had prepared some food and was to send the first daughter with Memia, named after Memia's mother, to take some food to the father before father would come to the homestead. But the news came and was broken, and everybody was really getting wild. So those who could went to the Muzungu's place, and what they found is a police Land Rover with a body in the back cabin, and it's parked outside, and whatever, there was a body rolled with a blanket, and the family could not open, could not get into the Land Rover, could only see from afar a rolled heap, and they were told that is the father, the husband, who was claimed to have hanged himself, was now rolled in a blanket, was in a police vehicle to be taken to the police station in Giugiu, where the police station was. They have nothing to say. They continued crying, went home. The body went, and that is all we know about our father's last time. So the employer, who actually was lent my father to recruit his employees and release him to go to his old employer he was used to, having declared my father dead and gone, now sent his family away to go back to where they came from. Now my father, before death, he was campaigning to take me to Central Province to follow my brother to go continue schooling. He envied the people he had left there because their children were in school. And with what was going on, he felt that the sons should all be sent to school. He campaigned that and tried to convince my mother to part with me so that I could go and join my brother. I was only 7 years old. But my mother teamed with my maternal grandmother, who was still living with us, and said I was too young and it was not fair for me to go. But before my father succeeded in the following year is when he left us. As he left us, the two brothers who came to sort us out, I say the sorting out was just to come and help us and see how to organize ourselves and how we would be helped to go back to Central Province, which some of us didn't know. What they did first is to try and plead with the employer to give a little time, because there was a lot of harvest in the granary. We had a lot of maize in the granary. We had peas and broad beans and even potatoes. And they thought we would organize how these would be ferried to get to where we were to go to. So they asked for time. I cannot remember for sure how much time, but it was about 2, 3, or a month, and it was given. During that time, just before the expiry of the given time, fire broke out. During those days, trains which commuted from Mombasa, Nairobi, and Kisumu used firewood to boil the water. And some of the stumps that they used to light that fire used to throw out a lot of sparks. And during the sunny season, there are some trees around Naivasha, Gilgil, and those areas called in Kikuyu Merereshwa, and they flower something like cotton. And those flowers, that's the one that carries the seeds. During the windy time, that one breaks off and moves around. So the fire was thrown out. It caught to the dry leaves within the savanna, spread through those flowers that are like cotton. Because of the wind, it would throw, and it came up to where we were. And in the middle of the night, at around 3, we were awakened by the big fire and bursting over the crop that was in the gallery. So as we woke up, we found there was a big fire. The houses were all in fire. We did not take anything out other than the little sheet that one was holding, nothing was spared. And the whole homestead burnt out. It took a bit of time to smoothening the iron before the fire went off. For a number of days. We were there, so we were to be accommodated by neighbors, now organizing ourselves to go back to Central Province. My immediate uncle left us, decided to go, and left now the half uncle, his half brother, is the one who remained with us and accompanied us to Central Province. We only managed to salvage 1.5 tins of maize and about a half tin of peas mixed with broad beans. And that's all. No clothing, no utensils, no nothing. And we had to travel to Central Province with nothing else. Before I left Nakuru, because Naivasha and the so-called Eburu where we lived, because it has very dark and very bitter memory, I would like to mention just something. As we grew up, I was the only black child in the family, other than the 2 sisters who were born before my mother joined my father. So I got the color of my uncle. And my brother who followed me, though he was so friendly, would not allow to spend the night with me. There were no beds. They were they were spreading bags, and then we would give him sheets or something to cover with. But my brother would not allow himself to sleep with me. He argued that I would make him get my color. My sister Duta, the first of my father, his follower Dega, and now my follower Idenji, and even the last born, Karaoke, were all brown, and I was the only black. So my follower did not want to sleep with me, otherwise I will contact him with that color. He was so stubborn. The sisters would wait until he falls asleep, and he would be made to sleep with me. But if he woke up at night or even realized that we were together, he won't sleep again. He will cry until they come for him. At the same time, as I told you, we were only wearing a sheet that was tied at the shoulder. You join the 2 sides of corners of the shuka, and you put something hard like a maize or something, and then you put them there. You tie with a rope, put it there. Then you will just open to get it out and cover with it. With him, he would not keep quiet. He wanted his side. This side, one side was to be open up to the end, but he would not want to be seen straight on the body. So he would cry until he forced the mother and the others to buy pins. So his sheet would be pinned from here up to the end. It looks like a kanzu, while the rest of us didn't mind just having a sheet. That is Gidenji, a very good and very industrious brother, Patrick Ivenji today. We have a long story ahead together. From there on now, going to Central Province, I will not let you know what waited for us in Central Province, but I will tell you later. The only thing I can tell you is that poverty that has color, and the color is very red, knocked on our door, and we lived with it. We did not see ourselves surviving very long. But God is God. Has been, He is, and He will ever be. Our mother, right from then, said, Ciana cia ngoriai ireragwo nĩ Ngai. The children without parents are taken care of by God. She also used to say, my sons, take courage. You will make it. In Kikuyu, ciana ciakwa mwĩyũmĩrĩriei, Ngai ndarĩ thome atoĩ. She would also tell us, mũrute wĩra, na mũtikanoe kĩndũ kĩa mũndũ, na mũtikanahoe. Ngai atinangagia iheo ciake agaikũrũkĩria mũndũ o rĩrĩa kahinda gake gakinya. Mũiguithanie, mwendane, na mũteithanie. Mũmĩrĩrie ng'aragu, Ngai nĩakamũrĩha. Gũtirĩ nyũmba ĩkahĩ ĩtakarugwo mũtwe. She used to tell us that. Take courage, work hard, don't beg, don't borrow, and bear the pain, bear the hunger. God has your share. It's only the timing. When His time comes, you'll get it. Because there's no house with a boy that you'll not slaughter and enjoy soup with the head of an animal, even if it is. And my small brother, who was funny, the one Givenji who did not want to be seen on the side, would joke with my mother, as whenever the mother repeated this, Givenji would say, mother would say, gũtirĩ nyũmba ĩkahĩ ĩtakarugwo mũtwe. And my brother would say, onokorwo no wathungura. Onakorwo no wathungura. That means if every home where there is a boy who works hard, the family will enjoy soup of a head of an animal. It doesn't matter even if it is a head of a rabbit. That was it. We went back to Central Province, and the bigger dark area came around, but by God's grace, we were out of it. I'll tell of it when we get there. I don't know whether there is anything that I would say up to 48, because we were helped by that uncle of ours, and we walked with the little we had to Gilgil. He booked us the train. This time he was wiser. We did not disembark in Uplands to walk across. He brought us up to Nairobi. We went to Nairobi station, and from Nairobi station he walked us to Kariako, Kariakor, there were taxis. They used to call them taxis. There were small buses like the mini buses we have today. Although they were odd, they were of their type that time. And that's where we went. There were some kiosks there built of canvas. He bought us mandazi there, things we had not seen before, some tea. And then we got into one of those buses going home, which drove us to where the ancestral home was. If I can just comment here, I've always feel for my elder brother. Despite what we all went through, I feel for him more because as he was taken to Central Province by his father to start schooling, and there was no communication. Even the information of his father's death was not broken to him. So he came to know of the death when we came to Central Province. And for the short time he lived there, he was intimidated. He lived roughly, and it affected him. Academically, not, but socially, it affected him. He became very humble. He had no counselors. Nobody talked to him about it. Not only him, but any one of us. And it has lived with us to date. And at times, we only ask for God's grace to forgive those who did away with our father, whom we did not see. We did not have any photograph or any record of him, and than the ritual we saw before his death is 1948. We were not even sure that it was his body that was rolled in the Land Rover, as we were not allowed by the policemen to go near the Land Rover. We were cordoned and kept at bay despite our cry and told to go home. And that is all we remember about our last history of our father. That bitterness had sunk very deep in our hearts, but by God's grace, we have forgiven, as we have nothing to do, and we have asked God to take over. The God we were told about our mother, who lived with us from there on, a disciplinarian, a loving woman, very hardworking, very tough, a character to be admired by many, brought us up single-handedly to be who we are. We all miss her. She left before we would give her the treat she deserved. The story you'll come to hear is how she's worked hard and toiled to have us survive, continue, and live to date to tell this story. May her soul rest in eternal peace. Amen. She introduces herself or I introduce her?
You can introduce her.
Ah, yeah, I can introduce her.
You can actually.
Okay.
Urenda wa introduce.
Yes, you.
Nĩ kũria tondũ rĩrĩ ĩyo matakĩnjũĩ.
Jane nyuma kura nde introduce. Na haha nimekuite ukawe introduce. Rikodo ya ngoma nimekore kango introduce.
Oh, njĩtagwo Jenny Baire.
bado ni hukwira
Tia kuheka. Bara ukahora maũndũ.
Nĩgũkwĩra